The two-story house standing in the suburban residential area of Ohio was bathed in the gentle glow of morning sunlight. Emily Chambers gazed out at the garden from the kitchen window, gripping her coffee cup with both hands wrapped around it. Today was a special day. It was the day her son Ryan would turn 7 years old. For Emily, these past 2 years had been a period of tremendous change. After 3 years of single motherhood following her divorce, she had met Michael and begun walking down a new path in life. Michael was a kind man who had built trust in the local community as an architect. He too had experienced divorce and was raising his 14-year-old son Jacob. Emily began preparing sandwiches in the kitchen. She planned to make 3 varieties: ham and cheese, peanut butter and jelly, and tuna salad that the children loved. "Mom, are you really going to have my birthday party today?" Ryan came rushing down the stairs and burst into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. With his golden hair all tousled and his blue eyes sparkling, he looked exactly like an angel. Emily hugged her son and kissed his forehead. "Of course, Ryan. Lots of your friends are coming, and I've prepared a big cake too. But first, let's have breakfast." As Emily prepared cereal and milk for her son, she mentally reviewed the day's schedule. The party would start at 2 p.m., 8 neighborhood children were expected to participate, there would be game time, and finally, the grand finale with the cake. She prayed that everything would go perfectly. Michael appeared in the kitchen with coffee in hand. Gray was beginning to mix with his hair, but his smile was warm and gave Emily a sense of peace. "Good morning, birthday boy," Michael said, gently patting Ryan's head. "Turning 7, you're really becoming a big brother now." Ryan nodded happily. "Papa Michael, is big brother Jacob still sleeping?" "That kid has a habit of sleeping in late on weekends," Michael said with a wry smile. "But I'm sure he'll participate in your party." Emily felt a slight uneasiness. Jacob wasn't a bad child, but he seemed to have complicated feelings about his relationship with his new family. He was right in the middle of adolescence and sometimes showed confusion about his father's marriage and the presence of a new little brother. Emily often found it difficult to gauge the right distance with him, and sometimes he would take a cold attitude toward her. "Don't worry," Michael placed his hand on Emily's shoulder, as if he had read her mind. "Jacob will celebrate Ryan's birthday as a member of the family too." Around 10 a.m., Jacob finally came downstairs. He was tall and thin with facial features similar to his father's, but his expression was somehow shadowed. Dressed in a black t-shirt and jeans, he silently took orange juice from the refrigerator. "Good morning, Jacob," Emily called out brightly. "Today is Ryan's birthday party. Will you help us prepare?" Jacob turned around and nodded briefly. "Okay." There was no emotion in his voice. Emily sighed quietly in her heart. Meanwhile, Ryan ran up to Jacob and spoke to him happily. "Big brother, lots of friends are coming today. Let's play together." Jacob's expression softened for a moment. "That's right, Ryan. Let's make it a fun party." Emily didn't miss that moment. It seemed Jacob had kind feelings toward Ryan. Emily went out to pick up the cake she had ordered from the local bakery. It was a special cake with chocolate cake topped with figurines of Ryan's favorite superheroes. When she returned home, Jacob was vacuuming the living room. "Jacob, thank you. That's really helpful." Emily expressed her gratitude from the heart. Jacob smiled shyly. "It's Ryan's birthday, so I want to make it a special day." Hearing those words, Emily felt warmth in her chest. Even without blood relations, she felt that Jacob truly loved Ryan as a real brother. In the afternoon, serious preparations began. Michael arranged tables and chairs in the garden, and Emily inflated colorful balloons. Ryan ran around everywhere in excitement, while Jacob quietly helped with the decorations. Emily began the final preparations. She took the cake out of the refrigerator and placed 7 candles on it. The colorful candles created a vivid contrast against the chocolate brown. "Mom, the cake is beautiful," Ryan's eyes lit up. "I'm glad you like it. But don't touch it yet. You have to wait until your friends arrive." Just then, the doorbell rang. The first guest had arrived. Ryan's best friend Tommy, who lived nearby, and his mother were standing there with a present wrapped in large wrapping paper. "Happy birthday, Ryan!" Tommy shouted excitedly. The two immediately ran out to the garden and began playing in the game area that had already been set up. Guests arrived one after another. Emma, Sarah, Michael, Jessica, Daniel, and the twins Kevin and Kyle. 8 children ran around the garden, and laughter echoed. Parents came along too, and adult conversations were lively. "Emily, what a lovely party," called out Jennifer from the neighborhood. Her daughter Emma was in the same class as Ryan. "I'm happy that everyone can enjoy it. Michael and I worked together to prepare it." Emily looked at her husband. Michael was playing frisbee with the children. She could clearly see that his gentle nature was loved by the children too. Around 3 p.m., Jacob came to Emily's side. "Emily, may I help prepare the cake?" "Of course." "Thank you, Jacob." The two went to the kitchen together. Jacob carefully moved the cake to a plate and checked the placement of the candles. Watching his careful work, Emily once again felt his serious nature. "Ryan looks really happy," Jacob murmured. "That's partly thanks to you. Thank you for being such a good big brother." Jacob blushed. "I want to be useful as a member of the family too." Those words deeply moved Emily. She had been troubled about her relationship with Jacob for a long time, but today, for the first time, she felt that real understanding had been born. "You're already a precious member of the family, Jacob." The two smiled at each other and carried the cake to the garden. The children let out loud cheers, and Ryan jumped up and down with excitement. "Everyone, it's cake time!" Emily called out. The children gathered around the table and sat with Ryan in the center. Michael lit the candles, and everyone sang "Happy Birthday." Ryan's face was glowing with happiness. "Think of a wish and blow out the candles," Emily said gently. Ryan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was surely making a wonderful wish. Jacob watched his little brother's happy face from a slightly distant spot. Ryan looked at the 7 candles and took a deep breath. The children around him fell silent, watching this special moment. Emily held up her camera, trying to capture her son's expression filled with his wish. When Ryan blew forcefully, all 7 candles went out at once. Loud applause and cheers rose from the children. "Well done, Ryan!" Michael called out happily. Emily picked up the cake knife and placed the first slice on Ryan's plate. The rich aroma of chocolate drifted through the garden, and the children's eyes sparkled. Jacob helped distribute cake to the other children. "Thank you, Jacob. That's really helpful," Emily said with heartfelt gratitude. She was feeling a special change in her stepson's cooperative attitude today. Ryan bit into the cake with a big mouth, laughing happily with chocolate around his lips. Seeing that innocent smile, Emily's chest felt warm. It was a moment when all the hardships she had endured seemed to be rewarded. However, when Ryan had eaten about half the cake, his expression suddenly changed. "Mom, I feel kind of sick," Ryan said in a small voice. Emily noticed that his complexion had turned slightly pale. "What's wrong, Ryan? Does your stomach hurt?" Emily rushed to her son's side. Ryan shook his head, but even that movement seemed somehow awkward. "It's okay, you're probably just too excited." Emily placed her hand on her son's forehead. He didn't seem to have a fever, but something didn't feel normal. At that moment, Ryan's body suddenly swayed. "Ryan!" By the time Emily screamed, her son had already slipped from his chair. Everyone in the garden fell silent in an instant. The children's laughter stopped, and the adults' conversations were cut short. Ryan collapsed on the ground, his body trembling slightly. The trembling was light at first but gradually became more intense. Emily tried to lift her son up, but when she saw Ryan's face at that moment, she was horrified. Her son's lips had turned blue-purple. "Michael, call an ambulance." Emily's voice was shaking. Michael immediately took out his cell phone and called 911. Ryan's eyes were hazy and unfocused. He had a vacant expression, as if he were looking into the distance. The trembling in his body wouldn't stop, and his breathing became shallow and rapid. "Ryan, can you hear Mommy's voice? Stay with me." Emily held her son on her lap and desperately continued calling to him. However, Ryan's response was weak, as if his consciousness was fading. Other parents were trying to take their children home. They were upset by the sudden event and didn't know what to do. The party's joyful atmosphere vanished in an instant, and tension and anxiety dominated the garden. "The ambulance will arrive in 5 minutes, Michael reported. Jacob stood at a distance, watching Ryan with a pale face. His hands were shaking, clearly upset. "Jacob, it's okay," Emily called out. "Ryan will surely be fine." However, those words were also to reassure herself. Her son's condition was clearly not normal, and Emily's heart was beating violently. The sound of the ambulance siren could be heard in the distance. As that sound gradually approached, Emily's anxiety increased further. Ryan's body continued to tremble, and the blue color of his lips seemed to be getting darker. The paramedics rushed into the garden. 2 male crew members quickly checked Ryan's condition and fitted him with an oxygen mask. "When did these symptoms begin?" one crew member asked. "About 10 minutes ago." Suddenly after eating cake, Emily answered in a trembling voice. "He's conscious but his responses are weak. We'll transport him to the hospital immediately." Ryan was placed on a stretcher and taken to the ambulance. Emily also got into the ambulance. Michael and Jacob would follow to the hospital by car. In the ambulance, Emily gripped Ryan's small hand tightly. Her son's face with the oxygen mask looked completely different from his usual lively expression. "Mommy is here with you. You'll be okay." Emily continued speaking to her son while holding back tears. When they arrived at the hospital, Ryan was immediately taken to the emergency room. Emily was told to wait in the waiting room and spent anxious time alone. 30 minutes later, Michael and Jacob arrived at the hospital. Jacob's face was ashen, clearly deeply shocked. "How is Ryan's condition?" Michael asked. "He's still being examined. They don't know the cause." Emily clung to her husband's arm. At this moment, she felt once again that she was not alone. An hour later, a doctor in a white coat appeared in the waiting room. She was a middle-aged female doctor with a serious expression. Mrs. Chambers. Yes. How is my son's condition? Emily stood up and looked at the doctor's face. The doctor hesitated slightly before speaking. We performed blood tests on your child. We need to discuss the results in detail. At those words, Emily's heart felt like it would stop. Is it some serious illness? It's not an illness, the doctor said quietly. However, a certain substance was detected in his blood. Emily stared at the doctor's face and waited for the next words. Drugs. Sedative components were detected in your child's blood. At that moment, Emily's world collapsed. Drugs. That can't be possible. The symptoms match those of a child ingesting adult sedatives, the doctor continued. It's unlikely he took them intentionally, so they were probably mixed into something. Emily's legs shook. She couldn't breathe. The doctor looked at Emily seriously and quietly asked, Mother, do you really not know what this could be? At that moment, she felt as if everything had collapsed. Emily's legs trembled, her breathing became shallow, and everything in front of her went dark. Emily collapsed into a chair and covered her face with both hands. She couldn't accept the word drugs as reality. Why would her 7-year-old son have ingested adult sedatives? Doctor, isn't there some mistake? Michael asked in a trembling voice. Ryan is just a normal 7-year-old child. Drugs. There's no mistake in the test results, the doctor answered quietly. The concentration of sedatives in his blood was at a dangerous level for a child. Fortunately, he's stable now with proper treatment, but if it had been any later, it could have been life-threatening. Emily looked up and stared at the doctor. Please let me see my son. Just for a little while is fine. But his consciousness may not be completely clear yet. The three headed to the hospital room. Jacob was clearly upset as he walked down the hallway. His face was pale and his hands continued to shake. When they entered the room, Ryan was lying in a small bed. The oxygen mask had been removed, but N4 was connected to his arm. His complexion looked better than before, but he still seemed to be sleeping. Emily sat beside her son's bed and held his small hand. Ryan's hand was warm, and his pulse seemed stable. Ryan, it's Mommy. Can you hear me? Emily spoke to him gently. Then Ryan's eyelids slowly opened. Mommy. Ryan called out in a faint voice. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Yes, Mommy is here with you. You're going to be okay now. Ryan looked around and saw Michael and Jacob. Papa Michael, big brother Jacob. We're all here, Ryan, Michael said gently. At that moment, the room door opened and 2 police officers entered. One was a middle-aged man, the other a young woman. You're the Chambers family, the male officer introduced himself. I'm Detective Davis, and this is Detective Johnson. We'd like to ask some questions about your child's case. Emily was surprised that the police had come. Did the detection of drugs mean this would be treated as a crime? Tell us about today's party, Detective Davis asked. Participants, preparation of food and drinks, everything in detail. Emily and Michael explained the events from morning in detail. The names of the children who participated, the names of the parents, all the food that was prepared. Detective Davis took careful notes. Who prepared the cake? Detective Johnson asked. I bought it from the store in the morning and put the candles on it in the afternoon, Emily answered. And Jacob helped with the final touches. At that moment, Jacob's body stiffened. Emily noticed this but thought it was because he was nervous. Jacob, you helped prepare the cake. Detective Davis turned to Jacob. Yes, Jacob answered in a small voice. Can you tell us specifically what you did? I moved the cake to a plate and checked the position of the candles. Jacob's voice was trembling. Emily thought he was nervous about being questioned by the police. Was there anyone else who touched the cake? No, just me and Jacob, Emily answered. The police officers looked at each other. Then Detective Davis approached Jacob. Jacob, could we hear your story in more detail once more? In a separate room, with your father. Michael looked confused. Why just my son separately? It's procedure. We need to hear from all related parties individually. 30 minutes later, the separate questioning ended, and Michael and Jacob returned. Michael's face was pale, and Jacob looked like he had been crying. Did something happen? Emily asked worriedly. Michael tried to speak but couldn't find the words. Instead, Detective Davis explained. We obtained important testimony from Jacob. Unfortunately, he admitted that he voluntarily mixed sedatives into the cake. Emily couldn't believe her ears. That can't be possible. Jacob wouldn't do such a thing. However, Jacob looked up and nodded while crying. It's true, Emily. I did it. Heavy silence filled the hospital room. Ryan had fallen asleep again, and his innocent sleeping face emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Why? Emily's voice was shaking. Why would you do such a thing? Jacob began crying intensely. The complex emotions deep in the 14-year-old boy's heart had finally overflowed. I wanted to become a member of the family, Jacob said through his sobs. But Ryan was always getting all the attention, and I felt like I was being forgotten. Jacob, Michael tried to place his hand on his son's shoulder, but Jacob pulled away. Dad, Emily, everyone only cared about Ryan. No matter what I did, nobody noticed me, Jacob continued. So I wanted attention too. I thought if Ryan got a little sick, everyone would worry about me too. Emily was stunned. She couldn't understand that Jacob's motivation came from twisted jealousy born from love for his family. But I never thought it would become really dangerous, Jacob continued crying. I just thought he'd get a little sleepy. I didn't mean to hurt Ryan. Where did you get the drugs? Detective Davis asked. They were in Mom's medicine box, Jacob answered. Sleeping pills that my previous mom had left behind. Michael's face turned pale. He still hadn't disposed of the medication his ex-wife had left behind. Jacob, what you did is a serious crime, Detective Davis said sternly. Fortunately, Ryan survived, but one step wrong and this could have been attempted murder. At those words, Jacob cried even harder. Emily was hit by complex emotions. Anger, sadness, and at the same time, sympathy for Jacob. I love Ryan, Jacob shouted. I think of him as a real brother. So I wanted everyone to accept me as family too. At that moment, everyone in the hospital room was speechless. Love and jealousy, the need for approval and loneliness. The complexity of a 14-year-old boy's heart had caused such a tragedy. Ryan moved slightly on the bed. He hadn't fully regained consciousness yet, but seemed to be responding to his family's voices. 3 weeks passed. Jacob was sentenced to juvenile detention and would undergo a rehabilitation program. Emily couldn't sleep every night. A subtle distance had developed between her and Michael, and a heavy atmosphere pervaded the house. Ryan fortunately recovered completely and had started going to school again. However, when asked about that day, he would only shake his head and wouldn't say much. Emily sat on the living room sofa, staring at divorce papers. Michael had been a kind husband, but this incident had left deep wounds in their relationship. They didn't blame each other, but they didn't know how to move forward. "Mom, what are you looking at?" Ryan came home from school and leaned against Emily's knee. Seeing his innocent eyes, Emily quickly put the papers away in a drawer. "It's nothing, Ryan. When is big brother Jacob coming home?" At that question, Emily was at a loss for an answer. She had only explained to Ryan that Jacob was going to a special school. "It will take some time. I want to see Big Brother," Ryan said with a serious expression. "Big Brother was worried about me, wasn't he?" Emily was surprised by her son's words. "Why do you think that?" "That day, before I ate the cake, Big Brother said, 'Ryan, it's okay.'" It was a kind voice. At that moment, Emily felt a lump in her throat. Even while mixing in the drugs, Jacob had continued to hold love for Ryan. In the evening, Michael came home. His expression was exhausted. "Emily, I need to talk." The two faced each other in the kitchen. Tears were floating in Michael's eyes. "My son hurt your son. I don't expect to be forgiven." "Michael. But I have a request. Please don't abandon Jacob. That child is part of our family too." Emily was moved by her husband's words. Even in a situation where he might lose everything, Michael hadn't abandoned his love for his son. "I was thinking the same thing," Emily said quietly. Jacob made a mistake, but in his own way, he loved his family. At that moment, Ryan came running into the kitchen. "Mom, Papa Michael, can I write a letter to Big Brother Jacob?" The two looked at each other. "Of course, Ryan," Emily answered. Ryan wrote the letter earnestly. In crayon with large letters, it said, "To Big Brother Jacob. Please come home soon. I love you, Big Brother." From Ryan. The next day, the three visited the juvenile detention center. When they reunited with Jacob in the visiting room, he seemed greatly changed. He appeared more mature than before and seemed to understand the weight of responsibility. "Emily, Ryan, Jacob started to say when Ryan stood up. "Big Brother, welcome back." Ryan showed Jacob the letter through the glass. Jacob read the letter while crying. "Ryan, I'm sorry. I did something terrible. Big Brother is my family," Ryan said clearly. "Mom, Papa Michael, we're all family." At those words, everyone in the visiting room cried. The pure heart of a 7-year-old child embraced the complex emotions of the adults. "I'll work hard to rehabilitate myself," Jacob said. "To become a real family." Emily smiled. "You're already family, Jacob. Blood relations don't matter. Loving each other is what makes a family." In the car on the way home, Ryan was sleeping in the back seat. Emily and Michael held hands. "It's going to be a difficult journey," Emily said. "But let's walk it together," Michael answered. "As a real family." 2 years later, Jacob returned home. He had changed. He had become more responsible and was able to express his love for Ryan in a healthier way. The Chambers family wasn't a perfect family. However, by overcoming difficulties, they had become a true family bound by deep bonds that transcended blood relations. Love is sometimes complex, and being a family isn't easy. But by forgiving and supporting each other, any trial can be overcome. This is what they learned.